Top of the morning to you all on this wonderful St. Patrick's Day here in California. I'm Adrienne DeWolf, and I would like to welcome you to our webinar, Cross the Bridge to the Common Core Gold, a special title just for today. So I'm going to be using a new presentation mode. I'm going to try Powtoon. I don't know if you've played around with Powtoon, but I'm going to use their slideshow feature. If you haven't tried making their animations or slideshows, it's a very fun tool to play with. So hopefully everything will go well. I want to point out a couple of things about using our devices today. Depending on what kind of device you are on, you should be able to find a little hand. That is the way that you can raise your hand in response to questions or if there's something that's not going right for you. You should also see a questions window. So feel free to type in both questions and comments into that window. All right, well, let's get started. I'm going to enlarge my screen. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Bridge, which is the Common Core tool that we created at EdOneStop. The Common Core tool grew out of our work at EdOneStop. Hopefully you are familiar with EdOneStop's portal. This is a portal that we use to deliver streaming video and other digital resources to our schools and districts here in Contra Costa County, as well as in 2 other counties. And of course, Bridge had to be a pithy acronym. So this is our acronym for Bridge. But mostly we wanted to bridge the Common Core standards to digital resources that teachers would find helpful. So we've created a gateway to connect those educators with these innovative resources. It might be something like Graphite if you're familiar with Common Sense Media's Graphite tool. However, there's a couple key differences with our tool, which I'll be talking about. The first is that they're very targeted at specific content standards. There's a lot of things these days that say they align to a certain Common Core standard, or more than likely it'll say it aligns to 32 different Common Core standards. Our tool is very targeted at a specific standard from a teacher's point of view. So the idea was that we wanted to take teachers' great ideas, connect them to the Common Core, and have a way to share them out with others. All educators are welcome to submit resources, and I'll talk about how you might share that with your teachers at your school sites. But all submissions are carefully reviewed before we post them, and all include a brief description of the actual resource, as you can see here with the 10-frame interactive, as well as a teacher prompt. And this teacher prompt is really what makes this the gold piece of Common Core Gold, because our teachers have written up a specific prompt as to how they've used this particular activity or resource in their classrooms and what they could do to extend, or what tips or helpful hints might be useful for a teacher trying to implement it in the classroom. As you can see, it's a fairly short resource description and prompt. The idea is to just give teachers enough information that they're going to want to know if that resource will work for them, but not quit reading because it's just too much time to look it through. And as I mentioned, what makes ours a little bit different is that it is written for teachers and written by teachers. So all our submissions are reviewed by multiple teachers that are using these resources in their classrooms to align to Common Core standards. So we don't want the tool to have just one voice, and that's partly where we're going to go today, is to talk about how you can have your teachers submit resources as well, because we wanted all teachers to be able to contribute to this community of learners. So as I said, we're really working to build online community through our Common Core tool and through our Ed One Stop portal. And you are our community, and we would invite you to help us populate it with resources. As you can see, there's quite a few resources submitted, which we'll talk about and give you a few minutes to look through. I'd also like to encourage you to follow us at Ed One Stop. If you're not on Twitter, that's the place to be these days for educators. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to the Ed One Stop portal window, ed1stop.net, and you'll be going there in a few minutes yourself. So I'll remind you of that URL. And as you can see, there is a sign in for those schools and districts that have subscription resources, but the Common Core tool is not or does not require a subscription in order to utilize it. So you can access the Common Core tool without even signing in. So this is something you could certainly share to educators anywhere, not just the ones in our county or other counties that may have an Ed One Stop subscription. So, and I want to point out right here our Twitter feed for @Ed1Stop. And as you can see, we're constantly tweeting out resources that have been submitted. This was shared by P. Templeton 09, which is a teacher that works with us in Orinda. And she's aligned a resource to the Reading Information Standard 4.2 that utilizes Musella and Padlet. So again, follow us on Twitter to get the latest about resources that have been submitted and that we're sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and log in, even though you don't have to, but that way my window will appear a little bit bigger to you all. So, let me try that one more time. The leprechauns are fooling around with my keyboard this morning. And there we're in. 3 times the charm. So I'm going to take you into the Common Core tool, and as I said, I've logged in, but you don't have to in order to access these resources. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour of the bridge. So I'm going to start with the Language Arts tab. We have both the Language Arts and the Mathematics standards. All of the standards are populated in the tool. And Steve Bateman from our Contra Costa County office does the back-end programming for this tool, and I really think he's done such a great job. So to start with, I want to point out that there's quite a few search features just for the standards themselves. So if a teacher is just looking, for example, for a keyword in a standard, like, for example, main idea, and perhaps wants to know where main idea appears in the standards at their grades and where it might appear at the standard above them or below them in a grade level so that they can have some continuity. So I'm going to go ahead and search for main idea just within the text of the standards. And as you can see, it will pull up all of the standards that reference main idea along with the strand, reading information, speaking and listening, and the grade level. So this is the one that I showed briefly when I first started, which was a standard submitted by Patsy Templeton from Orinda. And if you're not familiar with Musella, it's a great free resource. They also have a subscription piece to their resource, but you can use it for free in your classroom. And each resource has a link at the top that if you clicked on would open the new Zella resource. And then it has a brief description of the standard itself. So provide your students with current high interest news articles. If this is too small and you can't see this, please type a message into the questions window so that I can enlarge my window if needed. So you can see she has a description, and then teachers have put their own notes and tips as well, so that a teacher would know that you can set up a Newsella account and select from a variety of articles that the students can choose. And then here's the special part of the resources in the bridge. Right here is the teacher prompt. So this is the special information from our teachers to other teachers out there about how they've used the standard, how they found it helpful. So it gives teachers a starting point, a snapshot of how they might use this in their classroom. It might not be the only way or the main way they would choose to use it, but at least it gives them one access point. And I always find that very helpful to have an example as a classroom teacher. So as you can see, the teacher prompt says that students will choose an article to read using Newsella. And once the article have been read, students will meet together to discuss the ideas about the main idea and the focus of specific paragraphs within the text. So if we look back at the standard, determine the main idea of a text and explain how it is supported by key details. Summarize the text. So she's really trying to get at the core of this Common Core standard with her teacher prompt. In addition to Newsella, she's also said, why not use Padlet, which is a virtual wall or paper on the internet that is also a free resource that could allow students to express their thoughts on the topic. And she's even here got an example of a Padlet. So in many cases, when possible, teachers have gone ahead and posted an example of student work or something to give other teachers an idea of what this might look like. So you'll also notice that each resource is cataloged as what type of resource it is. So for this particular resource, it is a free website. And if I scroll down to look at the other main idea resources that have been submitted for the standards dealing with main idea, you can see we have Prezi, which is also a free website or presentation software. Here we have an iOS app, Adobe Voice. And in each situation, you can see if a teacher has submitted it, we've given them credit as well as the district that they are coming from. So I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. Here we have EduCreations, a free website and free mobile app. So it's both. As well as Show Me, which is also a screencasting app if you're not familiar with it, very similar to EduCreations. So as you can see, lots of different kinds of resources. And then the final one that I want to point out, this one happens to be BrainPop. Now, this one is an Ed One Stop subscription, so it will point out that a subscription is required. So if you were not logged in or your district didn't subscribe to BrainPop, then you wouldn't be able to open this particular resource. But as you saw, many of the resources are free and accessible to everyone. Okay, so I'm going to move on and show you a couple of other ways to search the standards and find resources. So we did a text of the standards keyword search. I'm going to go ahead and clear that. And you could also search for keywords in the resource itself. So for example, if your teachers were getting interested in using Haiku Deck and you wanted to get some examples of how teachers are using it at various grades, and you wondered if it had been submitted in the tool, you could search for the terms Haiku Deck. And as you can see, it's been submitted at the 4th grade. This one was submitted by a San Ramon Valley teacher. And the neat thing about this particular submission is that Patricia has several student examples that particularly correlate to the fourth grade curriculum. So these are student samples that her students have made. So for example, one of the fourth grade curriculum standards in science is about magnetism. And so here you can see that she has an example of a magnetism haiku deck. And haiku deck is if you don't know, is a very cool image-driven presentation software that works on the iPad. So as you can see, they've done a really interesting job of really using images to show the information that they learned in science about magnetism. So along with the keyword in the resource search, you could also search, I'm going to go ahead and clear all. You could also search for a particular district or teacher if you knew that or thought that they had submitted a resource. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and search for San Ramon, my son's district. And as you can see, it will pull up all the submissions by teachers in San Ramon Valley. So this one was done by a third grade teacher in San Ramon, Jonathan Williams, who's been working with us. And this was done, again, by Patricia McCullough. Again, Newsella is a popular resource that's been used in a lot of different ways for that reading information standard or strand. So I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clear out the keyword in the resources, but I do want to just point out that you can search for districts. You can also search for a particular teacher. So Patricia Hanley is a teacher who's worked with us, and you could use part or all of her name. She's a first grade teacher in Lafayette who has submitted some really great iOS apps. This one is to support the Fluency Common Core standard, and she's using iTalk Recorder to have the kids practice fluency and listen back. And whenever the teachers have a support document, like in this example, she has students fill out a recording sheet to monitor their reading. They've also included these support documents. And when possible, they've included them as .docs or Google Docs so that other teachers could take them and modify them as they needed. All right, so I want to give you some time to search through the Ed1 Stop Bridge, but before I do that, let me go ahead and remind you to post questions and comments in our questions window. And I will go ahead and scroll back up and click on our math strand or tab to show you those math standards before you start doing some of your own searching. So one of the things I didn't point out when I was looking at the language arts standards was the other filters that you can use besides the search windows. So for both language arts and math, you could simply drill down to the appropriate grade and show all of the standards at that grade level. You can also pick a particular domain, or in the example of language arts, a strand. So for example, if you wanted to see what standards were in the geometry strand and what resources went with those standards, you could simply drill down to that domain and grade level. We also have a keyword search in the text of the standards for math. So for example, I love this new word that's coming out of the math standards, decomposing numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and search for decompose, and let me go ahead and clear all, because as you can see, it was just bringing up the fourth grade because I still had fourth grade in there. So I've cleared it. And let me go ahead and type that in again. And there you can see at kindergarten the use of the word decompose in the text of the standards. There's some really great examples here from various teachers on using screencasting in particular for decomposing numbers. And you can follow that keyword in the various other strands as they appear. So now sometimes you might see that some of the standards do not have a resource yet posted. And that's where that community piece comes in, and where we would love to have you share with your teachers both to utilize our resources, but also to share resources that they're finding useful. So if they just click here, it will bring up a form in which they can submit their resource that they would like to suggest. And of course, we will review it and edit it and provide any polishing if needed, and then give them credit and credit to their district that they're coming from. So it's a great way for teachers to build community with each other in sharing their resources that they're finding helpful in their classrooms. So I'm going to go ahead and clear my decompose search. And I'm going to go into grade 8. Again, clear all is important. So I'm going to select 8th grade. And for my domain, I'm going to choose functions. So if I scroll up or down here, you'll see several 8th grade standards around functions. And we've had some really awesome middle school teachers from Moraga and Lafayette and other districts in our county submit resources for this particular strand or domain. So we've got the Desmos graphing calculator, which you may be familiar with, that many math teachers really love to use. Here's a resource, visual patterns, to create linear graphs based on visual patterns. Here's the one that I think is really interesting. It's called, I'm not a math teacher, so it's great when something's accessible to me too. This one's called Graphing Stories, in which the students watch brief videos about time or air pressure and blowing up a football, and then they try to graph what that would look like as a linear equation. So, and what Carlene's done for this one is she has not only her description and her teacher prompt, but she's even got a couple tips and extensions. So she suggests using graphing stories as a warm-up or an exit ticket to check for understanding, and that the fact that they're very short, they're all under 2 minutes, that it's an ideal learning tool in this application. And as an extension, she's also linked to a Desmos activity if you wanted to take this particular standard a little bit further in your 8th grade classroom. So I'm going to clear that search, and along with the grade levels and the domain, you can further search by cluster within the math standards, as well as a particular standard. So if you know the particular standard that you're searching for, you can actually just go right to it. So I don't know if you've used some of the apps or other resources out there that are Common Core search tools for the standards themselves. I've used a number of them and found our search tool has so much more depth as far as being able to understand the standards and correlate grade level to grade level. As I mentioned, I love the fact that you can search for a keyword within the standard and see where that concept, like main idea, appears at various grade levels. So I've showed you how to submit a resource, and I do hope that you will share that with your teachers. I want to give you a couple minutes to go to edonestop.net. And again, that's edonestop.net. You do not need to log in. So I'm going to go ahead and log out and show you what that looks like when you go. And I'd like to recommend that you click on the Common Core bridge at the top and do some exploring. So I'll give you about 2 minutes to do some exploring. And I would love it if you would type your questions or resources that you found helpful. Like perhaps you could put the standard ID and the name of the resource in our question window so we can do some sharing that way. So take a minute, go to ed1stop.net, the Common Core Bridge tool, and look around at some of the resources that are posted. So it's 9:26. We'll convene back in about 3 minutes at 9:29 and wrap up our discussion of the bridge tool. All right, well, I'm back, and I do hope that you took the time to find a resource or two and search ed1stop.net. We know that if we don't actually try a new resource that we've found out about it, that we tend to forget and lose that learning. I do want to encourage you to follow us at ed1stop, and I would love to have your teachers submit some resources to our tool within our form that I showed you within the bridge. I'd love to hear from you if you have any other comments or questions. And I wish you a wonderful rainbow-filled day on this St. Patrick's Day, and or at least not too much trickery from the leprechauns today. So thank you so much for joining me. All of the resources that I've shared today, including my slides, will be posted on our training wiki, which is the CCCOE pd.pbworks.com wiki that you probably used in order to register for today. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the morning.